Welcome to the first episode of our 27th series, everyone. This series is both a little different and very similar in many ways. First, we welcome Alex Flanigan to join us as the guest co-host, filling in for Amelia due to a family emergency. And we wanted to take a moment to thank Alex immensely for stepping in literally at the last minute to record this series.
Yes, thank you, Alex.
And Alex, if you aren't aware, is the keeper for the one-shot network podcast, A Horror Borealis, which is a Monster of the Week actual play that is really amazing and worth checking out if you haven't yet. And Alex is also one of the two hosts, along with Addison Peacock, of the Cryptid Keeper podcast, a podcast about cryptids and other folklore and mythological creatures. I also highly recommend checking them out as well. As for our guest this series, we welcome my best friend, Adam Steward. Adam and I go back all the way to first grade when we were first aware of one another. But oddly enough, we actually knew each other as babies.
Really?
Yeah, my brother, who was about 5.5 years older than me, was babysat by Adam's mom since they were neighbors for a bit.
Mm.
And apparently we knew each other before we were 1 year old.
Wow. Small world.
Yeah, it's bizarre. But yeah, he doesn't have any projects out there. He's not big on social media, but he is an expert at guiding people through this game. So it was really good to have him on. And this is his first podcasting experience. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm sorry I missed it. Unfortunately, I had less fun things going on. But
yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah, exactly. But I think the episodes turned out really well, and I can't wait for you to hear them, Amelia, and for everybody else here to hear them as well.
I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
The Kickstarter for Courier's Call is just about 48 hours left at the time of this recording. So if you haven't checked that out, now is your chance. Courier's Call is an all-ages podcast set in the world of Skyjacks, which we covered in Series 26. Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic show, and the Kickstarter's already been funded, so don't miss your chance to get some of the cool perks for being a backer.
Yeah, absolutely. And another really cool thing that you could do that would really make things a bit brighter for all of us in the waves hands aimlessly times that we're in.
Wildly gesticulating this whole thing.
This whole everything going on. Yeah. Is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, and or the review platform of your choice. And seriously, if you leave them in multiple places, we'll read them in multiple places now.
We're desperate.
It's fun. We only have one left after today's review.
So please get on it. Please, please, please. Please do this for us.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to read this review from Wompdank, I assume. That's how I'm going to say it. From the United States on iTunes, titled Actual Play from a Unique and Refreshing Angle. Whenever I'm curious about an RPG, the first thing I do is look up how character creation is handled. Who can I be? What can I do? How do the rules encourage me or hold me back? Character Creation Cast operates on that exact premise, making new characters and a new system every month. Amelia and Ryan have introduced me to some of my all-time favorite games, which I'm grateful for. The tone is extremely positive, and the hosts are just nice to listen to. It's a real uplifting vibe, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very nice.
We're glad that we can be uplifting in all of this.
Yeah.
Hands waving.
Hands waving everywhere. Awesome. Well, I guess with all of that out of the way, let's get on with the show, shall we?
Enjoy.
Welcome to Character Creation Cast, a show where we discuss and create characters, the best part of role-playing games, with guests using their favorite systems. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan, and this episode, Amelia was not able to join us due to a family emergency, but we are excited to welcome Alex Flanigan, co-host of the Cryptid Keeper podcast and GM of the A Horror Borealis podcast, to fill in for Amelia. And we are here together to welcome my best friend in actual real life, Adam Steward, to talk about Beyond the Wall, a fantasy genre RPG by Flatland Games.
Welcome to Character Creation Cast, Adam. We are so glad you could join us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Let's start by introducing you to our audience. Adam, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and maybe just sort of spitballing here any like really embarrassing stories that you have about Ryan?
Sure. Well, I've been playing games with Ryan for quite a while and known him since the first grade. So as far as embarrassing stories, in all the years I've known him, he's never done or said anything that wasn't of the highest level of dignity. So I have absolutely nothing to say in regards to that.
Well, that's extremely kind and very anticlimactic, but we'll take what we can get.
I'll get your check to you later. Awesome. And Alex, can we introduce you to our audience in case they are not familiar with you or your award-winning work?
Well, you certainly can, although I think you really hit all the interesting points already. So I am half of the Cryptid Keeper podcast, which is a podcast where my co-host Addison Peacock and I every week talk about a new cryptid, usually, or just another folkloric or mythological creature. We've been going for like 100 and some episodes, so eventually you run out of things that are strictly in the realm of cryptid, and we start to get a little bit fast and loose with the definition, but that's a lot of fun. And then, as mentioned, I am the keeper for A Horror Borealis, which is a Monster of the Week actual play podcast on the One Shot Network.
Mm-hmm. Which I thoroughly enjoy, and I'm not just saying that because I'm now the editor.
You spend more time listening to it than probably anybody else.
I mean, that's probably fair.
You probably spend more time on A Horror Borealis than I do.
That's also probably fair. Awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into this, and we will start by discussing what this game is all about.
What's in a game?
All right. Adam, you want to go ahead and tell us a bit about the setting for Beyond the Wall?
Sure. So Beyond the Wall is a going to be like a low fantasy type setting. So it's very... in a lot of ways, it's much like your classic role-playing games. The world itself is up to the players and the game master to create together, but that would be the general setting of low fantasy, I would call it.
Mm-hmm. It feels very D&D light to me.
Yeah, and I think in the book itself, they describe that it's heavily based off of early Dungeons and Dragons with a lighter rule set.
Mm-hmm. I'm sort of breaking script immediately here, but What is your personal connection to the game? Can you just tell us a little bit about like why you're here talking with us about this specific game instead of some other game?
Yeah. Beyond the Wall is a game I discovered maybe a year or so ago. I was looking for something. My daughter's 10. I was looking for a game. I just wanted to kind of bring some people together, introduce some new players, and I was looking for games that might be good for younger players or new players and introducing. And I don't recall exactly where I had first seen Beyond the Wall, and I know the description of it intrigued me, and the rule set was light enough that I thought it would be a good game system for somebody just learning.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Is it one that you play like somewhat regularly? Is it like sort of an old familiar favorite that you keep coming back to, or? Yeah.
So actually, I game master a group that Ryan is in that we have a campaign going on right now. So,
somebody buried the lead and didn't give me that part of the show. That's really cool.
Yeah. So, but it's been one of my favorites. I think that I've ever played.
I absolutely thoroughly enjoy the system as well. It's interesting because like in D&D, you go out adventuring and you just kind of keep going. And by Beyond the Wall, it very much feels like you have a home base in this village that you create together. Mm-hmm. and then you kind of go out and do some stuff and then come back. And you kind of keep getting brought back to the central village, which is a home for all your characters.
Mm-hmm. That's really neat. That's something that I have to say. I'll preface this by saying I do not have many terribly kind things to say about D&D, so I'm not going to go down that road. But that's something that I find kind of lacking in D&D for me personally, and this is not necessarily like a fault that everybody will have with the game. But for me, I really like stories that explore community, and I like, it's something I spend a lot of my life thinking about. But I really enjoy stories that sort of deal with like interpersonal relationships and sense of place and sense of belonging, and like what it means to participate in a community or a town or a village like that. And so I think that's something that's really, really interesting, that games like D&D, or that sort of pay homage to that whole like quote unquote murder hobo idea, where you just go out and you just have a bunch of adventures and sort of consequences be darned, those things don't matter to you after you leave the screen. Like, I think that is missing such an interesting part of storytelling. So that's really neat. I like that this game leans into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what sort of things do we need to actually play this game, like from a hardware standpoint? Sense of adventure and, a gumption and willingness to make friends aside, like what do we actually physically need in front of us to play this game? What does it run on?
It's going to be all the traditional stuff. So you're going to want to have dice and pencil and paper as we go. In terms of books, it's really easy to purchase a PDF, or you can get the hard copy of the book. And then there's some extra stuff that the game master may want to have ready to go as well. There's going to be, to go into a little bit further into what Beyond the Wall entails. One of its strengths is that it's really good for kind of pick up and play. So we'll kind of go into that in more detail, but there's going to be what's called scenario packs. So a dungeon master, game master is going to want to have that ahead of time. They're going to want to know which one they're going to use and kind of have those documents ready to go.
What array of dice do you use in this game? Is it everything from a D4 up to a D20, or is it like a D6 standard set?
Yep, D4 through D20. Yep.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think one set of polyhedrals is all you really need.
For the most part, yeah, you can get by on pretty much that. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Pretty cool. So what sort of stories and themes do you think this game is meant to explore?
So the source material, the authors talk about this in the book a bit, where what inspired it. There's a couple different pieces of literature. One is Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea novels, and the other is Lloyd Alexander's Chronicles of Prydain. I myself have, after picking this up and looking at the material, I read one of the Chronicles of Prydain books, but basically what those the themes of those stories are going to be young adventurers, very untested. Oftentimes they're somewhat mundane to begin with, and then them being maybe pulled into adventure and kind of going from there. So it has that same flavor, I guess, this game does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I picked up on that quite a bit when we were playing our campaign, where we were just kind of this ragtag crew of villagers, and we're kind of thrown into the depths of adventure by happenstance, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Are either of you familiar with the limited run animated show Over the Garden Wall?
I have heard of it.
I am not.
So it's really, really cool. It's a beautiful piece of animation. It's a mini series. It's like extremely autumnal energy. So sometime this fall, look for it. You can find the whole thing on YouTube or elsewhere. I don't know exactly which streaming platform it's on. It's Cartoon Network, but you can find the whole thing and binge through it in maybe 2 or 3 hours. The episodes are really short, but really, really fantastic. The reason I bring it up is just because, and this conversation is going to dead end a little bit since neither of you are actually familiar with it. It was just going to be a side tangent. But anyway, I found out actually, once you sent me the name, I realized that it sounded familiar, and I checked, and I actually have Beyond the Wall in like my Google Drive of games that I have purchased, and I couldn't remember why I got it, and I think it was because my friends and I were looking for some new games at some point to run like some just spin-off adventures in, and we were all really, really into Over the Garden Wall at the time, and the name sounds kind of familiar. The game and the story really don't have anything to do with each other, except that in Over the Garden Wall, part of what happens is these two young boys, one of whom is like older middle school, high school aged, and his much younger stepbrother, who's probably like mid-elementary school, maybe, get thrown into this like weird fantasy dreamscape world where it's like very sort of standard low fantasy. Like they're wandering from village to village, and there's sort of like creepy, strange things going on. There's one where they encounter this town full of people who are all dressed in like pumpkin and straw. And it turns out they're all like dead. They're all skeleton people who are like wearing pumpkins and scarecrows, and it's just like very strange and off balance. But there's one town that they stop in, which is like this little, you know, hovel and off to the side where everything is like cobblestone and thatched roofs. And they stop in this pub where everybody who is in there like has to be a certain character trope that fills a role in the village. And they get like really confused when these two stumble in, and they're like, well, what, like, who are you? What do you do? And he's like, oh, well, my name's Wirt. And they're like, no, that's not what we're asking you. Like, who are you? Like, this is the shoemaker. He makes shoes. I'm the barkeeper who delivers exposition. This is the highwayman. He like robs everybody. Like, what's your deal? So I think that's kind of neat. And it's just like a connection that I made as I was skimming through the game book itself and like the character archetypes. And I think that idea of like archetype and community is really, really interesting in a fantasy game. It's a cool thing to explore that sort of goes beyond like, how do you hit things? Or what kind of monsters are you good at fighting? To be more like, what role do you serve in this group?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the title Beyond the Wall it is alluding to that the heroes are, most of them are going to be from that village. They've rarely, if ever, left that village, during their lives, and something is distressing their little hamlets, and that's what's causing them to need to now go beyond the borders of that hamlet and into that dangerous world outside and beyond the wall.
Cool. That's a very like tried and true YA premise. You know, you're like here in this insular space, and now you have to go be something else out there.
Yep.
And like here are all these undefined circumstances. So you have this chance to sort of figure out what that is, which is really neat.
Right.
So we've talked about this to a certain extent. I feel like we've gotten a feel for this question already, but what do characters do in this game? You've alluded to the fact that there's sort of intra-community portions and like external portions. Is that something that the game intentionally explores?
Yes. Yeah. The character growth and having to go into the world and whatnot. Yeah, that would be, I would say that'd be accurate. Yep.
So I know the answer to this question a little bit, but what do you think is the most unique thing about Beyond the Wall?
Well, Beyond the Wall, where it really shines, and so you can. There's rules for character building and traditional campaigns. So if you ever just wanted to use a system that's just similar to the traditional, maybe Dungeons and Dragons style, you can do that. But really, where it shines and what the intention of when it was made is that it's gives you all the tools to really pick up and play and do, they say in about 3 to 5 hours, you can do everything from character creation. The game master can put together a game and have a full-blown adventure kind of in one evening. So it gives you those tools with the playbooks, which is what you use to make your characters, and then also with the scenario pack. So that's really where it kind of it kind of shines, I'd say.
Absolutely. I also love the collaborative world building aspect of this game.
Yep.
Which when you're talking about like traditional-esque RPGs like D&D and whatnot, a lot of the world building is up to the game master to create everything, and then you're just kind of playing around in it. But this one, it pretty much gives a lot of the world building reins to the players right off the bat.
Yes.
And they get to make a lot of like both little and big decisions on what like the world and the village looks like.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And that gives some of that heavy lifting goes, from the game master to the players, and it does that really well. And then of course, I don't know how much we'll kind of go into, they have the other, there is a second book that they published called Further Afield, and that allows you, if you wanted to go into a full-blown campaign, and Ryan and I are kind of exploring this right now with our group, but you can actually do the whole world building together, kind of collaboratively and whatnot. So everybody gets a say in what kind of world is that they're playing in, and what kind of adventures that they're going to be going on, and whatnot.
That's really neat. It sounds like a game that stands really well on its own, and I don't want to diminish that, but I just wanted to comment that it sounds like Beyond the Wall could be a really incredible sort of training wheels game, whether to like get your D&D loving friends into something that's a little bit further afield, maybe like you hook them in with the fantasy that everybody really wants and feels like tabletop games are supposed to be, I think, at a certain point in their journey. And then you sort of can gear it in this direction of like, okay, but maybe like what do different stories look like, that we have like these familiar dice, we have dragons, we have like rogues and bards and adventurers, and all of that stuff feels good to you. How can we maybe start to take this in a different direction? Or similarly, for people who are like really intimidated by the scope and magnitude and maybe like pre-expectations of what D&D is as a stand-in for all tabletop games, this could be a really nice option to show some people like, listen, this has all the things that maybe you think you want tabletop games to be, but it doesn't have to be like really crunchy and super complicated and everybody telling you exactly what things look like. Like you can have a little bit more give and take, a little bit more buy-in, and still get somewhere that tells a story that you think you want to be telling.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Neat.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of history about the game, and these are all just facts that I'm reading from a document that was compiled for me, just to pull back the curtain a little bit. I didn't do this research, so I take no credit for it, but I also take no blame for anything that's wrong. So the main game was released in 2014, so actually comparatively recent, all things considered, by Flatland Games, and contains 6 playbooks and everything you need to play and create a village. The main long-form campaign supplement called Further Afield was released the following year in 2015 and contained a lot more options for your characters, as well as expanded on that collaborative world-building process that we talked about. Multiple other supplements and playbook packs have been released as well and are pretty easy to find on DriveThruRPG.
Yeah, and they have a lot of free stuff as well. A lot of little freebies that you can get. I believe there's some free extra characters that you can download. Cool. There's some pay what you want stuff on DriveThru for different character playbooks. And we'll probably talk about this a little bit once we create characters, but like you can create your own playbooks in this game as part of the rules. Like all the playbook options that we're going to be going through are all just kind of optional things. And the actual like core rules of the game are like, you get these 3 classes, here's how to mix them together.
Cool.
Which is really cool. All right. Well, before we get into that character creation process, there's a few basic terms and concepts that I'd like to go over. I know there is things like the 6 attributes. Adam, if you wanted to kind of talk about those a bit.
Yeah, so it's going to be your 6 really traditional attributes that you would see in most, or in a lot of games, I should say. So you have your strength, your dexterity, your constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And then everything is kind of based off of those attributes.
Yeah, the really fun thing about this is that you don't roll for your attributes. Depending on the character playbook that you choose, certain attributes start at a specific level, and then the worksheet that we're going to be going through that is unique to each playbook will be adding bonuses to each attribute for each step that we complete, which is really cool. It's a pretty unique way of creating characters.
Yeah, I agree.
So another thing that we might need to keep in mind is how skills work in this game.
Yes. Yeah. So how skills work is it's not traditional in that there's not a comprehensive list of skills. And if you play in a long-term campaign as characters level, you may have some flexibility in terms of kind of coming up with different skills that represent what you want your character to be able to do. But basically how skills work with everything except for combat and savings throws is that you're doing what would be an ability score test or ability score check. And that is how you're going to accomplish, any random thing, whether you're picking a lock or busting a door down, those types of things. So you can roll a d20 and you're successful if you roll at your ability score or lower. And then, of course, the game master can add modifiers if things are more difficult. If it's a particularly difficult lock, maybe they give you a -5 penalty on it. And that penalty would go then towards your attribute because you have to get lower than that score. So there are skills in the game. And when we do our character playbooks, we will get skills. And how skills work is it's going to add +2 by default to anything that a skill could be relevant towards. So there's some going to be the players and the game master are going to have to work together a little bit in terms of determining, is this relevant in this particular scenario? Okay, my character has an ancient lore skill. Does that apply in knowing how, to deal with these fairies or something to that effect? So so there's some kind of give and take there. But by default, it's going to be a +2 bonus. And then if you end up with a skill twice, it becomes a +4 and so on. But that's generally how skills will work in the game.
Yeah, and it caps at 19.
The attributes do, yes.
Yes, so the only way to fail is then to roll a natural 20.
Yes.
So it's kind of opposite. Like a natural 1 in this game when you're doing skill checks is the best you can do. Right. Whereas a natural 20 is pretty much a guaranteed failure almost. So, and
that's one thing that they address in the book as well. If some people are uncomfortable with a lower number being better, there are some rules for how you can kind of flip that. The reason being is that in combat and savings throws, rolling higher is better. And as they discuss in the book, some people are uncomfortable with a natural 1 being excellent in some scenarios and terrible in other scenarios. So there are rules that you can reverse that if you want. But in general, ability checks, you want to roll low, and combat and savings throws, you want to roll high.
And I think the last concept to cover is fortune points.
Yes. So fortune points represent luck. They're something that only the heroes will have. And what fortune points allow you to do, they do a couple of things. One is that if you want to help a teammate in completing a task when they're making an ability score check, you normally can only assist them if you have the skill, and then you add your bonus, I believe, to their roll. If you don't have a skill, you can't help, but you can use fortune points to be able to do that, and then you give them a +2 on that roll. There are other things that it can be used for would be if you want to re-roll, so you get a second chance, they call it, on a failed roll. Or then there's also cheating death, which is to stabilize yourself when you get to 0 hit points and prevent yourself from basically bleeding out and whatnot.
Yeah.
How are fortune points determined? Do you start with a set pool of them and then they just go down, or can you earn them or acquire them? Do they reset?
Yeah. So every character, and on the playbook, it'll tell you how many fortune points that you start with.
So some people are luckier than others.
Yes, exactly.
That's really neat.
Yep. Yeah. So the default, I believe, is 3 would be most typical. And then once you spend them, you don't get them back except for between adventures. So if you play, if you're just playing for the night, you won't ever get them back. But if you use these characters again in a future adventure, then you would replenish those fortune points at that point.
That's a lot kinder than Monster of the Week.
Yeah. Yep. Right. And then, so rogue characters will have what's called Fortune's Favor, and then they typically would start with 5 fortune points instead. So that's one of the advantages of playing a rogue type character.
And I think it's elves, since they're like kind of at the end of their time in the world, their fortune is down 1.
Yeah.
So they'll start with like 2 or 4, depending on the archetype they kind of take.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's there's a lot of different combinations that they have in this game. So it'll be interesting to see what we come up with.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you think we might need to know before we hop into creation, Adam?
No, I think that gives us kind of the base of everything. All
right. Are we ready to make some people?
You bet.
All right, let's make some people.
Let's make some people.
All right. So in the outline, I have a link to a blank fillable character sheet if you wanted to use that. Otherwise, if you have one printed off, you can feel free to use that. And then, Alex, I sent you, let me see if I have it here.
Big long list of guys.
There's a big long list. Oh, it's so many. There is so many different playbooks in all of the like expansions and the free expansions
I saw that.
And stuff.
It was quite a great deal.
But what's really cool is that they're kind of all segregated by 3 main things, whether they're a mage, a rogue, or a warrior, or a combination of those. So if you have kind of the like thought, like, I kind of want to be a rogue, you can just go and focus in on all the rogue archetypes.
Now, I see on this character sheet that we still have alignment, which is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Is that, like, how heavily does that play into this game, or how heavily does it have to play into this game?
So far in our experience, at least in my experience, it hasn't played a major factor. The alignment is the old chaos, neutral, lawful. So there's no good or evil, and they point out in the book that of course law does not necessarily mean good, and chaos does not necessarily mean evil. And then they also point out that most characters will be neutral, and if as you're making your character you're not really sure which way you want to go, they recommend being neutral.
Yeah, it's definitely a simplified system compared to D&D, for sure.
Yeah.
I personally like it better. It's a very like quick way of kind of seeing which side of the law or which side of mischief, I guess you lay on, you know? Yeah, I probably am most comfortable with neutral for my characters. But I was looking through the archetypes, and it said that elves generally leaned chaotic because of their Fey ancestry. Yeah, which is interesting. But obviously you don't need to be bound by that at all.
We get into a whole big conversation about like racial alignment and bonuses and all the reasons why they are hopefully a dying feature of the industry. But I'm not going to commandeer your podcast that you have so graciously invited me onto just to start a fight.
No, absolutely. What's neat about this is I don't believe there's any like racial bonuses or modifiers in this game. It's all kind of flavor at that point, if I remember correctly. Like some characters get a little bit different of things, but they all kind of balance to about the same. I don't I'm trying to think, because we in our group that we're playing with, we have one elf and one halfling, and I'm trying to recall some of the specifics. It doesn't lay heavily onto the characters. I think one thing I remember, if I remember correctly, with halflings, they have a very low like maximum strength or something to that effect. Yeah, that might be one of the very few things.
Yeah, it's not overwhelming. I know that in terms of what changes with the different races.
Yeah. It doesn't really come into play too much, I would imagine.
Cool.
Depending on how you want to gear your character. Because when I was making the character and playing with the campaign, I was like, oh, wait, charisma all the way if I can. And turns out I rolled the right things on the progression, and I would have ended up with 20 charisma. But but the max is 19. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I lost a point somewhere. Whatever.
Well, this conversation gave me just enough time to copy my character sheet onto a Post-it note.
Oh, fun.
Nice.
Cool. I am now ready to go.
That works.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to manage everything off my phone, and that was not working, so I needed a hard copy somewhere.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of have an idea of what I wanted to do for my character. Did you have anything that popped out at you, Alex or Adam?
I really don't have any strong feelings. When it comes to character creation in general, I have a tendency to find a playbook I really, really like and then sort of try to turn it on its head as much as I possibly can, which is maybe not ideal for a game like where we're trying to demo, what the system is intended to design. So I'm more than happy to sort of fill in the gaps after we come up with like what the other parts of our team look like. That's kind of something that I find enjoyable. I like to see what the layout of the group will be and then maybe be like, well, what can I offer that's kind of unique and different? So
yeah, absolutely.
And that might be cool too, because then we'll see if I can avoid falling into the same tropes that I usually fall into when I'm making characters.
That's always the fun part of this show. So I was thinking of going with a warrior rogue, specifically the heir to a legend, which I believe is one of the expandable playbooks that you can get for free. And this one is... this is what it says about the playbook. Your father has always told you stories of how great a hero he was. Many of the other villagers scoff at his stories and pity you for being raised by such a liar. But you know that he is true and honest. Now you have his sword, a mighty weapon of power, and you will make a name for yourself to make him proud. So I start with this pretty cool magical sword that grows in power as I gain levels.
That's awesome.
Which is really, really sweet. Yeah, and I guess I would be a pretty decent fighter in the party.
I would hope so, with that magic sword.
Very cool.
Yeah, that rules.
All right, how about you, Adam?
Okay, I think then I'll go with the self-taught mage playbook. So this is one of the playbooks that comes with the main book. And the description here is you were always a bright child. You loved stories of ancient wizards and sorceresses who mastered the arcane arts. Unfortunately, there was no one around to teach you such things. In fact, sometimes you wondered if the stories of magic were even true. And so that kind of gives us a little glimpse into the low magic or low fantasy aspect of the game. When you came of age, you found an ancient tome and decided to find out for yourself. You're the brightest child in the village. Your intelligence begins at 12, and all your other ability scores begin at 8.
Wow, 12 off the bat. Goodness. That's awesome.
Okay, cool. So we have a warrior rogue, we have a mage. So that really sort of at least partially covers like all the bases, right? Because there's like warriors, rogues, and mages, and then combinations of the three.
Right.
So let's see. What can I do here?
So let's see. Like rogues will be a lot more skilled, like something that's pure rogue or something that has the highly skilled trait.
Ooh, I know what I want to be.
Oh, go for it.
And this is exactly me following into every single trope that I always fall into. So I didn't avoid it after all, but you know what? Life happens. We find the things that we like and we like them. So I'm going to play the Trickster Fox.
Ooh.
That's really cool.
Which is a rogue mage.
Yeah.
So the Trickster Fox is born to ordinary foxes. There was always something otherworldly and magical about you. You grew up in a distant forest, but have come to the village now and befriended humans. You live with the witch, who finds you a useful companion, but the youth of the village are your true friends. You have much to show them about the world. You are swift and quick-witted, but lack hands, and people often misunderstand you. Your dexterity begins at 13, your intelligence begins at 10, and your strength begins at 5. All your other ability scores begin at 8.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
really
so
cool.
I think the thing that I do think is really fun about this actually is that it's not like you're like a kitsune or something who is like a human incarnation. You are just actually a fox, which I think rules.
Yeah, that is really cool. Yeah, and I know at least in the Chronicles of Prydain that comes up with where we have talking animals and intelligent animals and those types of things. So you can kind of see that that influence there too. So that's really cool. That's definitely one of the more flavorful playbooks, I think.
That's an amazing poll. This is going to be a fun group, I think. All right, so let's see. I am the heir to a legend. It's a very grandiose title, but I'll take it. Okay, so now that we have our playbooks, let me send you the link to the playbook for the trickster, because there is a little worksheet that we have to follow through.
Okay, cool.
That will give us all of our background stuff. I think that's under, was it Fantastic Creatures, maybe? Elders. I have to find it.
Oh, are you looking for which of the supplements and whatnot?
Yeah.
It's I think that was one of them that's downloadable on Drive-Thru RPG. I'm trying to recall, or maybe I had found it just. I'm sorry. Give me one moment as well.
Oh, sure. We'll edit this out in post. No, leave it in. Leave it in.
It could have been right on the Flatland Games website. I remember there was a couple of things that were not on Drive-Thru RPG. A couple of free supplements, and that one might have been one of them.
Did I pick like the most obscure and hard to find?
Oh, the Unusual Playbook, I think it is.
Yeah, that could be.
Tails and Paws, maybe. Maybe that's the one. There it is. It's under Tails and Paws, an Unusual
cute.
Playbook. So I'm going to pop this right into our Google Drive, and then I'll send you a link.
Awesome.
Tails and Paws. Doo-doo-doo. File unreadable. I don't like that. Maybe if I extract it first, that might be a good idea. There you go. You should have it now.
Perfect.
Cool. This is the part that I love the absolute most about character creation. Probably more than village creation, which is saying a lot. Because I absolutely love me some collaborative world building.
I agree.
Okay, so
These are some long playbooks.
they are, but they're not at the same time. It's just you have like what, 7 things to roll on, and that gives you a background of your characters. So like each playbook is completely different. It looks like you got a whole section of how did you come to the lands of men sort of questions, and then how did you learn to become part of the human village for the second set, which is really cool. And then for mine, what was my childhood like, followed by what have I learned. And then these are basically like, where did you come from and how did you get here?
Cool.
Effectively. And if I remember correctly, you roll on each table, but you have one chance to select an option on one of the tables.
Yep.
If you so choose.
Yes. Yeah, that's the rule that they recommend. One time you can either ignore your roll and just pick something else, or just if you see something you absolutely want, you can do that one time. And they also kind of point out, at least with the standard villager characters, which and I can't recall exactly what the Trickster Fox's playbook looks like, but I think for the characters Ryan and I are playing, there's going to be a couple of childhood tables, and they say, well, that could kind of influence what kind of character. And, if you have a certain thing in mind, their background, that might be a higher impact area.
I mean, if your jam's like really cool, you can probably just make your character the way you want your character to be, right?
Oh yeah. However the group, I mean, if the group wants to do it that way, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't, why you would say, no, don't do it that way. So
I do love a random table. I really do. I think they're a great and wonderful thing that can encourage you to take your character in some directions you never thought of before.
Yeah.
But also sometimes, like, you're the one who's going to be spending time running around in this skin, right? You want to love it.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think the reason the default rules are, hey, roll on these tables is because what they have in mind is that, okay, we're going to get all this done, and we're going to build all these characters, and we're going to play this adventure in, 4 hours or 5 hours. Mm-hmm. And this allows you, if everybody's kind of picking off of every table, which is totally fine, but it might take you a little while longer.
Totally. There's something really kind of great and beautiful about, like, picking a playbook in 5 minutes that appeals to you, and then like rolling down a random set of circumstances, and then still managing to find something in there that like really resonates with you and gets you excited about the character. Like, that's a really cool thing. And I don't want to undersell that just by being snarky and saying that I love and would die for my trickster fox and want to know everything about them intimately right away.
Right. But I think if you're doing if you know right off the bat the group they're going to do a campaign, I could totally see that being an excellent way to do it too. It's just, hey, everybody pick whatever you think sounds the most interesting, for your character for sure.
Cool.
All right. And then one other thing to note before we start on this journey, there are different symbols next to each or some of the blocks. Mm-hmm. There's a scroll and a hand. Mm-hmm. You want to tell us what those are all about, Adam?
Yeah, so when you get to a table with a scroll, you're going to make your roll, and then what you do is the game master is going to have a piece of paper that represents the village, and it starts with the inn in the middle, and then you are going to add a location to the map. Now, it could be inspired by whatever you rolled. For instance, if your table indicates something about the blacksmith shop, maybe you decide, hey, we know there's a blacksmith shop, let's put it right on the map here. But if you have something in particular that's completely unrelated to what you rolled on that table, you can do that too. So it doesn't have to be related to whatever you roll. Mm-hmm. When you get to an area that has a hand after you roll on that table, you're going to add an NPC to the list.
Oh, neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you come up with somebody that lives in that village, and that could also, again, be inspired by whatever you rolled on that table. But if you have something in mind that you want to add that is completely unrelated to the table, you could go ahead and do that too. Mm-hmm. And one of the things they recommend is, hey, since we got an inn that starts in the middle of the sheet, you can always just put down an innkeeper right away at the top of the list, and the group can discuss that if they want. That's just one thing that they kind of throw out there. So
yeah, absolutely,
they kind of build off of that. So if you're playing with the scenario packs, while the players are building these characters, the game master is also writing down on his scenario pack. There's going to be some tables that have some blank spots, and he's going to be writing in these different NPCs. And then if he or she is making an adventure on the fly, they're going to maybe roll on some of these tables, and which NPC had encountered the villain previously, and they can roll on their table. And then the character that somebody came up with, the blacksmith, they're the one that had encountered the villain or whatnot. Mm-hmm. So gives them a way to kind of improv as they go too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's just go round robin style through these questions, shall we?
Cool.
Let's learn a bit about our characters, and we'll roll and see what we get, and tell the audience how our characters are progressing as they go.
Sounds good.
Does any particular person want to start? Otherwise, I'm ready to roll.
Go for it, man.
Yeah.
I'm going.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of this character creation series. We'll be back in part 2, picking up right where we left off.
Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter at CreationCast. or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used and today's guests can be found in the show notes. If you'd like to leave us a rating or review, we have links to various review platforms out there, including Apple Podcasts, in our show notes. Also, check the show notes for links to our other projects. Thanks for joining us, and remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We will see you next time.
Now we gotta read some show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Character Creation Cast is hosted by the One Shot Podcast Network. If you enjoyed our show, visit oneshotpodcast.com, where you will find other great shows like Modifier.
Modifier is an interview show hosted by Megan Dornbrock, all about why and how people change games. From the hobbyist to the professional, from house rules to publication, we all have in mind a better way to play. What's yours?